So one of the most controversial elite specs in the Dragons has been Untamed. Lots of people just don't enjoy this elite spec. Well, really at all. They prefer Soul Beast a lot of the times because it just feels better. Personally, I disagree. Obviously, it's a very much an opinion thing. I love Untamed, especially after the buff they did on March 16th, I believe, where they buffed the Vow of the Untamed trait. It actually gets really, really, and I mean really fucking close to the damage that the sustained damage that Soul Beast does. It doesn't really do anything close to the burst damage that Soul Beast does, but it gets really close to the sustained damage it does. And honestly, I think it's pretty fucking viable. I've actually found it to be much easier to play than Soul Beast, at least for me personally. I found with Soul Beast you had to line up a lot of things, where Untamed feels a lot more spammy. You can kind of just spam fuck the buttons and be fine. That is if you're playing with Ferocious Symbiosis, by the way, like I am. If you're playing with Fervent Force, there's definitely going to be a setup sort of process with it. But I found, the experience on Untamed to be a lot more fun to me personally than Soul Beast and Druid could ever really offer. A lot of people's problem with this spec is that it's Core Ranger Plus. Core Ranger is probably, up until now, my favorite spec in the entire game. I loved Core Ranger. And, going to this really does feel like that expansion to Core Ranger that I personally always wanted, that Ranger just has not offered. Some will claim that Soul Beast is that as well, but personally, I don't like Soul Beast. At least in PvE, I'm mainly a PvE player. I just don't like how you have to line up a lot of things, it feels like, and how you're merged with your pet 24/7. Which just really, really, really blows. I've only actually found a 10-second difference in terms of kill time, around 10 seconds depending on, the way I'm playing Soul Beast, in terms of the lining things up properly. Sometimes I don't line it up properly and it fucks my whole DPS, but if I do, it's about like a 10 to 15 second increase in kill time, or decrease, I guess, on Soul Beast for the 4 million health golem. Not really a whole lot, and if you consider the survivability that the Untamed has, it could actually make it much better for average PvE players like myself. So I want to get that out of the way. I'm a big fan of this spec, but I do think it definitely needs some changes that could be very, very nice. And so let's go and get into this. So this is going to be some overhauls. Some ideas will be from my changes video. And as per usual with that one, this is more of a mix and match sort of thing. I'm not recommending that they do all of these changes, because if they do, it's going to be severely overpowered. And, a lot of people are going to look at this and be like, all right, where's the trade-off? That's going to actually be... Actually, we'll just mention it. If you do need a trade-off for all of these, I say bring back the incoming damage that you take on the Vow of the Untamed trait. This is actually a really good trade-off, in my opinion, if you're really going to buff the shit out of this elite spec, like I'm mentioning here, to make it more in line with Soul Beast. I do definitely think that this could be a very, very, nice thing to have in terms of a trade-off. It's not going to be ridiculous like the pet damage decrease on Druid or whatever. So, yeah, that's personally what I would like to see. Also, I definitely hear some people already saying that this is meant to be a PvP or world versus world spec. I think in the future, because of the fact that we're probably going to be getting a lot more expansions with elite specs and stuff like that, unless they completely redo the whole rework that system, I can actually see different ways to play certain trinities or whatever, right? So you have healing, you have tanking, and DPS. Tanking is not really that prevalent in this game, but as much as like DPS and healing. But I could definitely see each class having multiple different ways to do DPS, right? So like Thief, for instance, you have Daredevil and the Deadeye. Those are just completely different ways to do DPS, but they're both DPS-focused specs, right? So that doesn't mean that Untamed can't be a DPS-focused spec, and it's quite obvious that it is meant to be a DPS-focused spec rather than tanking or healing. It does have some things that increase your survivability, but in general, I don't really think it's meant to be a fucking tank, like we have 25% more damage here, 15% more damage here, right? And we have multiple boon applications here as well, or conditions here. There's obviously supposed to be some sort of DPS focus on here. So instead of making it so Soul Beast where it relies primarily on yourself, I want to make it so it relies a lot on your pet. This is a completely different way to play, and for people like me who enjoy pets, there you go. So that was the whole intro section there that I wanted to get over with. It was a very long intro, I apologize. The first thing I want to see is this is going to be pretty much the biggest change you're going to see, is going to be a kind of adrenaline-like of system. So we see with Druid in this, where the little celestial avatar button is, there's like a little circle, or half circle rather, which is essentially just a bar that you have to fill up in order to use it. Well, how about we make this so it's basically a bar where you could just go apeshit. It's some sort of, I don't know, maybe when you get fully charged, it would change this to, like, the, I don't really know how they would go about this, because there's still going to be the unleashing system, but I also want to see some sort of unleashed adrenaline or unleashed rage or something like that, where you could press it and you basically go, you or your pet, depending on the state that you're in, go apeshit and do more damage. Maybe bonus attributes instead of damage, or just, I don't know, something like that, where you just do more damage or have some sort of positive effect for either you or your pet, depending on what state you're in. So they'd have to make it so maybe there's like another button or something. I don't really know how they would go about this personally. Maybe, because the thing is, if you have the full bar charged up and you or your pet is unleashed, right? So let's say my pet is unleashed, but I want to make it so I'm unleashed, so I'm able to use that skill to be able to, go apeshit. I'd have to switch over, but I can't because I just replaced this button. So interesting thing to think about. I don't really know how they'd go about that. But yeah, some sort of like adrenaline system. Maybe you'd actually have to get rid of the whole unleash system as a whole at that point. But personally, I would like to see that sort of system come in, where it is that kind of really cool charge up rage system, kind of similar to what we see with the Bestial Wrath skill in World of Warcraft on the Beastmaster you're hunting for, similar to that, where you or your pet like grows in size. Obviously in that game you both grow in size, but you just kind of, maybe your pet, they can have some sort of lore description where it's like your pet becomes a mature pet for a short time, gaining bonus attributes. I don't know, I think that'd be kind of cool, but some sort of system like that where there's like a charge system and then your pet can get stronger, you can get stronger. I actually think does really fit with the lines, with the theme of this sort of spec, where you're passing back and forth the energy between you and your pet, the untamed primal energy between you and your pet. I think that'd be really, really cool. But yeah, so that is a big thing. I don't really know how they'd go about it, but that is something I'd like to see. So another thing I want to see is, I talked about this in my changes video, some sort of skills or even multiple skills for the unleash mode for your pet, depending on the archetype for your pet. One of the greatest things Soulbeast brought was this archetype system. So each pet in each family had their own sort of archetype. So we had supportive, and then there was ferocious and stout, and then you had the condition, which I think was deadly, versatile. I think that's pretty much about it, right? There was versatile. Yeah, I just said versatile. So yeah, I think it was a really, really cool system. I'd like to see this come to Untamed as well and not be a Soulbeast exclusive thing. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I don't really know how they'd go about it, but maybe just make, I don't know, the same skill even. Maybe your pet does a worldly impact. I don't know. You don't really have to go that deep into it. You could probably just make it so it's the same Soulbeast skills, but on Untamed for your pet. So worldly impact, primal cry, spiritual reprieve there. But instead of spiritual reprieve would heal allies as well. I think that'd be cool. Instead of just your pet. Sort of similar to how the Fernhound does it on its beast skill. Isn't the Fernhound supportive as well? Yeah, the Fernhound could be a really insane one. It could heal allies probably to a lesser extent than what Soulbeast does, I would think, because this is a pretty big heal, as well as being able to heal allies with this skill as well. I think that'd be really cool, actually. But yeah, you kind of get the gist here. They don't really need to make new skills per se, but just porting over the Soulbeast skills as maybe a fourth skill or replacing one of these three would be nice to make it so there's a difference between the pets. So not every single pet would have the same skills and be really, really boring like that. We would have some sort of difference, because one of the greatest things about the pets in this game is that there's so many of them with so many different skills and families and archetypes for Soulbeast. It's really, really cool and really in-depth and really, really fun to go with that. So yeah, another change I'd like to see, God, another fucking key, is instead of making so your hammer swaps with the unleash system, right? So your hammer swaps, that's 4 skills here, with whoever's unleashed. Just make a key for it, bro. Just like make it like a dedicated key where you could do it to your hammer, and then that's kind of it, right? And then so if I switch to my longbow or whatever, it just disappears. If I switch to my hammer, it's there. That way I could just make it a key, instead of having to do this shit. Because if I want my pet to be unleashed, right, and I want to use the AoE skills, my hammer goes to shit damage-wise. It's terrible at this point. It does literally nothing, compared to really any other ranger weapon. It does literally nothing at all. besides having some good CC effects. But yeah, I'd like to see just some sort of manual selection for this. I think it'd be much cooler, personally. But yeah, I guess that is sort of like a thing people might disagree with, but that's just something I'd want to see personally. But yeah, this is a minor one. Autocast options for pet skills. So, you know, obviously you're not going to make it so the autocast B skill. That's something I don't know if they could really do, but obviously these two could be autocast, just like how it is on, well, every other spec on the Ranger. I'd like to see this sort of thing come back, similar to how we can enable auto attacks on these skills. We could do it on these skills as well. This would basically make it so, you know, obviously the pets just use the skills off cooldown. I'd like to see this sort of system come back, not on every pet. Or, no, well, I wouldn't be using this on every pet, that's what I mean. On every pet it would be that way, but I wouldn't be using it on every pet, because there's some pets, like the Drake here, or these two skills are just straight up damage increases. I want these to be casted as much as possible, and I don't really want to have to micromanage my pet when it's like this, right? When it's just these straight up damaging abilities, I don't want this. But if I'm using the red mode, which is actually bugged right now with the heal skill, just want to mention that I don't ever want to have this on autocast, so an option for the autocast would be nice to have, for sure. That's something I definitely want to see come in. And yeah, I think that'd be great for low input players too. I think that's definitely a necessary thing. I'm surprised I don't already have that, honestly. Vow of the Untamed now counts for your pet. If they're to bring in a trade-off where there's more incoming damage coming to yourself, it would obviously count for the pet as well. But basically, this would just make it so whenever I'm unleashed, I do more damage and my pet takes less damage. And then whenever my pet's unleashed, my pet does more damage, and then, you know, I take less damage. Or maybe they'd have to get rid of the less damage. I don't fucking know, because then that wouldn't really make sense, right? No, whenever you're unleashed, you take more damage. My bad. So whenever my pet's unleashed, it takes more damage, but ends up doing more damage. And then maybe I take less damage. Or maybe it's like just a individual sort of thing where it only affects you and not your pet. And then, you know, go swapping over to the pet, it only affects the pet, not you. I don't know, something like that, though, would be cool, where it just does count for the pet in some sort of way. I think that'd be a really, really good thing, personally. A lot of people just like keeping their pet unleashed throughout the world, even though it's a really, like, terrible way to play. Now that, you know, Untamed, where the Vow of the Untamed got buffed, where a lot of the times you're going to want to stay unleashed because the fact you're just doing way more damage. But I've seen a lot of people who just keep their pet unleashed, so there's obviously a lot of people that just want to do that all the time. So I think that'd be kind of a nice thing to have for those kind of people, including myself, honestly. I would like to do that too. Being able to just be out in the open world and take less damage would be really, really cool. Obviously, because of the fact that it's your pet and not yourself, you would still be doing less damage than if you were to just take it into your own hands. But yeah, that is something to mention. I already mentioned the trade-off in terms of bringing back the incoming damage whenever you or your pet is unleashed, right? So just to mention that again, some sort of percentage, I think it was like 10 or 15% in Beta 3. This would come back as a trade-off that they really would need to do it. So if I'm unleashed, I take 10, 15% more damage. If my pet's unleashed, it takes 10, 15% more damage. Something like that would be a nice thing to have. So this is the final thing that I want to see that isn't an Untamed exclusive thing. But I've played Mechanist, and I've gotten really spoiled with this, man. I've gotten really spoiled with this. So they have a movement signet on there, which basically makes it so the boons you get are shared with your mech. I want to see this come to Untamed, but not in the fucking nature magic line, because nobody uses nature magic for damage. Nobody does that. Literally nobody. So I want to see this sort of thing be reworked. I want to see that skill ripped right out of nature magic and put in like the Beast Mastery trait line or something. So we can, you know, completely replace one of these skills. Fuck it, replace this one. This one's fucking ass cheeks anyway. Let's replace this one to make it so whenever you know, the boons you get are shared with your pet. Or we could just say fuck it and do it on one of these signets too. This movement speed signet could be a perfect place to put it, because I don't really see anybody ever using this. So this would be a nice thing to have as well, just like the movement speed signet on the the Mechanist. So that's the final change I want to see. Maybe even just make it like a passive sort of change, right? So it's always that way. And then obviously Mechanist players will get pissed, so you probably have to do it for them too. But yeah, that's just pretty much all the changes that I'd want to see. As I said in the beginning, this is a mix and match sort of thing. If you have any thoughts, any reworks that you'd want to see in the comment section, or some of my ideas don't work, you can go and leave it down below. If not, it's fine. I don't really give a shit, but you can do it. You know, in case of any people from MarineNet see this video and take it into consideration. I kind of doubt it, but, you know, we'll do it anyway. yeah, so that's going to cover it, and peace.